Hello friends, this topic is very positive and I'm excited. Opinion article: Free the Kraken. Warning for lawyer Sidney Powell. It's a military software that detects IP addresses. Find out who was involved in the vote count. They have the addresses of those who hacked the election. Identifies those who tampered with the electoral process. These elections could be annulled. Losing the election will be the list of the awards. The hare could jump next Thanksgiving Day. These manipulations were made in many countries of the world. Spain and the USA have suffered the same electoral anomalies. This would be enough to open a great political debate in Spain. All elections made under the same system could be challenged. Sidney Powell threatened to free the Kraken against election fraud. Powell denounces electoral interference financed by China, Cuba and Caracas. The elections were conducted under an executive order of unauthorized access. Its aim was to prevent prohibited access to the electoral and campaign infrastructure. Let's start. Since Michael Flynn's lawyer Sidney Powell threatened on Friday 13 to free the Kraken against election fraud, social networks have now stopped speculating about the literal or symbolic meaning of this enigmatic phrase. The closest translation was that all hell is about to break loose against those who cheated, and that losing the election will be the least of the worries. This is what I knew until recently, but my colleagues Rafa Pal and Inmaculada Fernandez have revealed the literal meaning to me and have stepped on the information spottily, so I express my fraternal recognition to their sharpness and art of wit. Now I extend their information with much more data. Last night I was so excited about this subject that I couldn't sleep. We are the conspiracy theorists, but time and events will prove us right, and will leave those who insulted us speechless. The Kraken is an IP address tracking program, so it would already have caught those who manipulated the vote count. I'm sure more than one of them would have gone on a certain trip to New Zealand or to the Kiribati Islands or Peter Pan's Neverland, my childhood hero, along with Tinkerbell, because they know what's coming. The phrase "free the Kraken" is from the 2010 film Clash of the Titans, where the monster appears as a weapon of the Olympic gods. Release the Kraken is set by Zeus from Liam Neeson, as has since become an internet meme. The creature has appeared in numerous films such as Under the Seas, Fury of the Titans, the Lego Batman movie, It Came from Beneath the Sea, Jack the Giant Killer, Atlantis Miller's Return, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Dead Man Chest, Pirates of the Caribbean at the End of the World, and Hotel Transylvania Summer Vacation. The legendary Kraken, besides being a huge and colossal sea creature from the Scandinavian mythology, commonly described as a type of octopus or a giant squid or jellyfish that emerging from depths attacked ships and devoured sailors. It is also a powerful military computer program that detects the IP addresses. Internet Protocol means, which is the number that identifies each device within a network. Accusations. General Flynn said on Twitter that I don't comment without the evidence to back it up. While His lawyer, Sidney Powell, has said, "We are preparing to overturn the election results in several states, and there is much more to come." General Michael Flynn was in the White House before the president took office and continued to work for him as National Security Advisor. Because of his line of work, he is up to date with many intelligence processes, including the preparation of some suspicious plans. After 22 days in office, General Flynn was visited by two corrupt agents still working for Mrs. Hillary, who threatened to persecute and attack his family publicly if he did not make a series of statements contrary to the president, which were also false. He resigned after 22 days in office and has been going through a tedious judicial process ever since, based on those false statements he was forced to make. Sidney Powell, who represents former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn in his legal battle over Russiagate, made his own accusations, or her own accusations, of foreign collusion and election interference on Fox News load up tonight last Friday. He threatened those responsible with the new American Revolution and called for a thorough investigation into what he described as a pattern of long-term election interference. Powell argued that the system, which would have been financed by Cuba and China as well as Caracas, would be little more than an election fixing operation. Patriots show up all day, every day, with statistical evidence showing that only hundreds of thousands of votes are being entered and replicated to change the vote, Powell says, suggesting that Big Tech and the media had finished the job by covering up for their political accomplices. There has to be a massive criminal investigation, and it's only going to affect millions of voters and election, he told on Fox News anchor, urging viewers to come forward now and get on the right side of this issue and report the fraud that I now existed, as he prepares to lift the curtains on the entire operation. Powell did not seem concerned about the December deadline that is approaching for states to certify the election results, arguing that for such serious fraud, I think even the states are stupid enough to go ahead and certify votes where we know the machines were operating and producing altered election results. They will also be voided for fraud. Excuse me. Norwegian law enforcement officials say, he suggested, not only should Department of Homeland Security's election security team be fired, but FBI Director Chris Wray should have been fired a long time ago. He said and criticized the head of intelligence for wasting taxpayer resources by intimidating a postal service whistleblower into retracting his story. Sidney Powell suggested in an interview on Sunday that there is even more evidence in the allegations of election anomalies. We are preparing to overturn election results in several states, Powell said, adding that he has enough evidence of voter fraud to launch a widespread criminal investigation. I don't comment without the evidence to back it up, he added, say the election software changed millions of votes. Warning. We are preparing to reverse the election, Sidney Powell told Fox News. Last week, The president's lawyer and former federal prosecutor Sidney Powell warned that she is freeing the Kraken, which means they would expose an alleged fraud in the election. In an interview with Fox Business anchor Lou Dobbs, Powell revealed that she has statistical evidence and startling testimonies to show that the voting machines altered the ballots and that this deception goes back to China, Cuba and Venezuela. That's why, she said, I am going to launch the Kraken. On Sunday morning, November 15th, during an interview with Maria Bartiromo of Fox Business News, Powell dropped another information bomb. We are preparing to annul the results of the elections in several states, and the president won not only by hundreds of thousands of votes, but by millions of votes that were displaced by this software that was designed expressly for that purpose. We have testimony from sworn witnesses as to why the software was designed. It was designed to manipulate elections. I was fully informed about it. She saw it happen in other countries. It was exported internationally for profit. They did this on purpose. It was calculated, and they have done it before. We have evidence from 2016 in California. We have so much evidence that I feel it's coming through a fire hose. According to Lou Dobbs, this is the culmination of what has been 4-year effort to overthrow this president. First, denying his candidacy in the 2016 election, but then overthrowing his presidency. According to Sidney Powell, this has been organized and carried out with the help of people of Silicon Valley, the big technology companies, the social networking companies, and even the media companies. And I'm going to launch the Kraken. In fact, it's a very tangled mess. It's wider and deeper than we ever thought. But we are going after it, and I'm going to expose all of them. Fraud detector. The IP address is a set of numbers that identify in a logical and hierarchical way an interface in the network of a device that uses the protocol Internet Protocol, or that corresponds to the network level of the model TCP/IP. Translated into the language of the street, the Kraken military software will be able to identify all those who tampered with the electoral process in order to alter the result, since this program was monitoring the computers that counted the votes in all times in order to detect intrusions and manipulations. This program could provide the courts with solid and obvious evidence of all those involved in this cheating, and not only would those who cheated lose the elections, but it is very likely that they would have a fair trial and been sentenced to several years in prison for trying to steal the elections. There is also the possibility that the cheaters would have used multiple servers and internet addresses to erase their tracks, as we have seen in some films. But that remains to be seen, and I do not think that they would have been so sophisticated because they were too confident. The sin of the arrogant is that they are often too self-effacing and often underestimate the intelligence of their rivals. We don't know when all this deception may officially come to light, but I estimate that it could take 2 or 3 weeks, and it may even come out sooner if they are lucky. If we are lucky, I mean. The most optimistic say that all this information is in the hands of the president and he can release it this very week, but that remains to be seen. It's possible that he will do what his own son asked with his what his own son asked him to do, that he will declassify information once and for all. So watch out for the hare's jump. With these tests, the president no longer needs to win recounts, and he certainly doesn't need the media on his side. All he needs to do is continue to gather compelling evidence, prepare to present it to the world, and continue to rally the support of millions of citizens. In addition, people involved in the counting of the votes were willing to come forward to testify about the deception of not counting the right votes. When the ballots were passed a couple of times in Michigan, women who have moved out of state discovered that their maiden name was active as a voter in Michigan. Hundreds of thousands of votes cast and then replicated, altering the election results. Technical features. The Kraken was a Cray XT5 supercomputer that went into full production mode on 2nd February 2009. The Kraken was operated by the University of Tennessee and was the world's most powerful computer operated by academia at the time. It was housed in the Oak Ridge Leadership Computing Facility at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. The Kraken was decommissioned on April 30, 2014. The Kraken hardware occupied 2,200 square feet, 200 meters, in January 2011. It ran the Cray Linux environment, a range of Unix-like operating system variants developed by Cray specifically for the supercomputers, with a maximum performance of 1.70 petaflops. Kraken contained 112,896 computing cores, 18,816 2.6 GHz 6-core AMD Opteron processors with 147 terabits of memory. It had a roll parallel file system with 2.4 terabytes of disk storage. The computer system consisted of 9,408 computing nodes, each with 2.6 GHz hex-core AMD Opteron processors, 16 GB of memory and connections via the Cray C*2 router, 2 plus router. It's totally a monster, a technical monster. In addition, the Kraken is a simple multi-platform URL scanner that can be built for Windows, Mac, Linux, and free BSD. It's designed primarily from its incident response, investigation, and ad hoc detection, not for endpoint protection. The following are the main features. First, scan running executables and memory of running processes. Second, scans install executables for automatic execution, taking advantage of automatic executions. Third, scans the file system. Fourth, reports any detection to a remote service provided with a web interface. 5. Runs continuously and periodically checks for new outcomes and scans any newly executed processes. 6. Store events in a local database and maintains Authorum and executable copies of detected events. End of technicism. National emergency. The president signed an executive order allowing him to investigate foreign powers interfering in U.S. elections. In other words, the 2020 elections were held under a national emergency declared by the president, who stepped up a trap on election day to prevent unauthorized access to electoral and campaign infrastructure. This story begins with a little-known executive order on unauthorized access to electoral infrastructure, signed by the president on September 12, 2018. That order, available at whitehouse.gov, is entitled Executive Order Providing for Certain Sanctions in the Event of Foreign Interference in a U.S. Election. In that executive order, which almost no one has reported since the day it was signed, the president declared a national emergency that is in effect on this day, and the 2020 elections were held under this state of emergency, which is a crucial point in understanding what comes next. In the executive order, the president stated that it's known that individuals and organizations located in part outside the United States can interfere with or undermine public confidence in U.S. elections, including through unauthorized access to electoral and campaign infrastructure, or to covert distribution of propaganda and misinformation. Global impact. It seems that these tricks for altering the election results were used in many countries around the world, including almost all Europe, so that if this deception were made public and official, it would delegitimize many governments and leave the ground prepared for the implementation of the Gisara plan that calls for new election 120 days after its implementation. According to the Spanish platform called Transparent Elections, the contradictory news that is reaching the public about the presidential elections held on 3rd November in the United States of America forces us to once again stress to the media and the general public the striking similarity between what happened in the US and what we know has happened in Spain in the elections of 28th April and 10th November 2019, and possibly since the year 2000. Transparent Elections detect serious deviations in its election count on November 10th from the official results, based on 3,872 minutes representing 1,494 1 million 4,094,214 votes. On behalf of the member of this Citizens Association, its board of directors has agreed to make public through this press release a wish that events taking place in the United States serve to open a debate in the Spanish Congress, which will be broadcast by the media and social networks in order to study all the defects of the Spanish electoral process to prevent the same frauds that have been committed in successive Spanish elections, at least since the year 2000. Time to go home. New Pentagon chiefs tell troops it's time to go home. The Pentagon's new interim chief, Christopher Miller, said in his first message to troops on Saturday that it's time to go home, suggesting that he could speed up the withdrawal of U.S. military personnel from Afghanistan and the Middle East. All wars must end, said Miller, appointed on Monday by the president as interim defense secretary. He said the United States is committed to defeating Al-Qaeda 19 years after the attack of 11 September in New York, and is very close to doing so. This is the critical phase in which we make a transition from a leadership role to a more supportive role, he said in a message dated Friday, but posted Saturday morning on the Defense Department website. Ending wars requires commitment and collaboration. We accepted the challenge, we gave it our all, now it's time to go home. In case anyone doesn't know, the return of the troops to their homes was one of the articles in Nesara's secret national law aborted by 9/11 attack, which I reported on 20 years ago and which later became Yesara wet plan. Don Carlos version. According to Don Carlos de Marbella, the president changed his title in his website to simply presidential candidate. We believed that he has done so because the United States now operates under a restored republic, and the president of that new republic has not yet been re-elected. Don Carlos adds that on 2nd November, the day before the elections, the president signed an executive order discussing the formation of a government that established Yesara, and wrote that this government would be established within 120 days. Don Carlos was told the main media would be disconnected for a week. Yesara plan requires that new elections be held within 120 days of its establishment. Those 120 days from 2nd November would take us to March 2021. The famous Ides of March would be the fall of the lowland swamps orcs. On the other hand, according to Robert Davis Steele's version of the story, Congress could resign after the Christmas holidays with more than 100 resignations due to agreements made during the current investigation of these electoral anomalies. Sidney Powell says he's going after the media, social networks, and all those who have committed computer crimes. Thanksgiving, which is 28 November, is an important date when the announcements could be made. Sidney Powell is likely to be the next director of the FBI. And that's all for today, which is a lot. Thanks a lot, everybody, and thanks for your patience.